Welcome everyone to another pick a card reading. Today's pick a card reading is a very deep dive about your spiritual life path, the core overarching reason, purpose, aim for your life in this incarnation overall. And so it is going to be fairly detailed and it is going to be fairly structured. And a large part of the reading is based on a spread that I've developed to reflect the Kabbalah. So the Kabbalah is the tree of life, and it has a number of emanations or sephirot that are aspects of the divine mind, and both from the divine consciousness and down into the world, which is the 10th sephirot, which is called Malkuth. So normally with the Kabbalah, the first Sephiroth is Keter, which is the divine consciousness, and the 10th is Malkuth, which is the earth. But the way that I've constructed this reading is that I'm basically, the first card will be not the first Sephiroth, it'll be the last Sephiroth. So the first card will be Malkuth or earth, because I'm looking at you in the world now and what you're manifesting in relation to your life and spiritual purpose. And then we will move upwards as though you were returning to the divine consciousness, so that it gives a sense about the blessings and challenges that you have in bringing about your life purpose, so that when you do return to the divine, hopefully many, many, many years from now, you will feel satisfied and be able to celebrate a life well lived and your spiritual purpose realized. So as with all pick a card readings, and particularly I would say with one like this, it is very important to tune in to the deck that, or the reading that fits you most. To help with that, I've put a rose quartz crystal on pile 1, a clear quartz crystal on pile 2, and it might be a little bit hard to see, but a black obsidian crystal on pile 3. If you do feel pulled to more than one, then there's nothing wrong with watching two. There may be two key aspects of your life that connect to your spiritual purpose. But as I say, the main thing is to connect to the one that you most feel drawn to. And then when we go through the reading, I'll talk through some of the complexities of this particular tarot reading as I go, so that you can see the structure of the reading. So when you are ready, the timestamps for your reading are down in the description box as always. If you're not sure yet, pause the video and contemplate till you feel drawn to the right one. And then when you know, I will see you in your reading. Welcome, pile 1. These first 3 cards from the True Black Tarot were under the crystal that you chose. And I'm using them as a bit of an overarching narrative of what the focus of your life purpose, your spiritual purpose is in this life. And then after that, I will be using a deck called the Tarot of Magical Correspondences that very much connects to the Kabbalah and to the Kabbalah pathways in relation to tarot. So you'll see as we build how that works. So for this first bit for you, it looks to me like there is a very material aspect to what you are meant to accomplish in this life. It may be that in past lives you were close to achieving real material security or even potentially wealth, but it does look as though something was incomplete, something wasn't finished, you didn't fully achieve all that you could have, and it may well have been to do with a high degree of competition around you and the need for courage, often in situations where you may have felt very alone compared to the competitors that you had and what you were dealing with. This could be in anything. It could be in business or career, it could be in politics, it could be in government, it could be anything that has an aspect of resources and power. It may even have been, I feel, for some of you, that you may have been in families where there was a strong legacy and lineage, and it might be partly trying to live up to that have been the issue. But it looks as though you didn't feel fully satisfied that you had completed something. We have the World reversed there. And the 5 of Pentacles reversed suggests that you will have here the material basis to move forward and look to complete what that legacy is, what that outcome materially is, and also the courage to do it. But that is the key issue, and it suggests that you will come across similar issues in this life. If you haven't already, and that may depend upon your age and so forth, but You are likely to have times where to fully complete your destiny and to materialize and manifest what you are meant to do in this life, you may have strong competition, strong times where you have to stand up and show what is unique about you so that you can complete this and bring it into being. My sense also is one of the reasons why this is important is that unlike many people potentially who are very materially focused, your material focus is not about greed. It's not about wanting power over others. In fact, it is about getting to a point where you can share with others. You can help others rise above whatever their circumstances are. So there's quite a strong social justice feeling around this as well for my pile one. So with that as a basis, we know we've got a material aspect. The Tarot of Magical Correspondences, as I say, what is really unique about it and why I want to use it for this type of reading is I don't use reversals for it because there's enough information in it already for this, because it not only has the traditional meanings of the tarot cards, but it also connects, as I said, to the Sephiroth themselves. And so we will see some of the interconnections of the questions as this goes through. And as I go through, it'll become clearer to you the structure and what I'm doing with the reading. But essentially, for each Sephiroth, I am asking a question that helps bring the balance about how you can best bring this life purpose into being. So to start with, as I said in the introduction, we start with the 10th Sephiroth, which is Malkuth, and that is Earth. And the reason we're starting with that is it's asking Spirit, what are you manifesting now? Where are you up to now? Because it gives us a bit of a foundation for what the other advice will be. So Spirit, please tell me for my pile one, what are they manifesting at the moment with regard to their life purpose, their spiritual purpose? So you have the Knight of Wands. That definitely suggests that you are acting towards this. You are taking the steps that you need to. It's a very welcome thing to see in relation to the Seven of Wands up there as well too, the sense that you will go towards your dream, your destination, and you're fairly well advanced, most of you, in whatever it is. So even if you're young, then you're doing well at school or university. Otherwise, if you're in sort of more mature ages, then you've taken actions towards starting to build whatever this is. And it could be a business, it could be, as I say, something in government or politics, it could be something creative, but it's something material. But there's a lot of inspirational energy there as well too. So it does have a bit of a creative flavour to it because the Knight of Wands brings a lot of inspiration. The only thing that you need to bear in mind with the Knight of Wands is that sometimes Knight of Wands is a bit like the Knight of Swords. Both can sometimes act before they think things through. So there is a little bit of a caution here to temper your enthusiasm until you're sure about certain things, but we'll see what else comes up as we go through the reading. This card connects to Tippereth. Now, Tippereth is further up the Tree of Life. It is all about what brings joy and beauty. So that again gives me a sense that there is something beautiful and balanced about what you're trying to bring into the world. So I do think that many of you may in fact have an artistic flair, or if you are doing it in a business or you're doing it around politics, because I get the sense that some of you may also be in that world, there is something about joy and beauty and balance that matters to you. So the actions that you're taking now and how you're building towards your legacy do connect to things that you find beautiful and joyful. So the next question is for Hesod or Yesod, and it is the transition point from Malkuth, Earth, to the divine realm. So it's often called the foundation. So for this particular reading, the question that I ask is, how does my pile one connect to Source? So you've got the Ace of Coins or Ace of Pentacles. Now this very much, again, underlines that sense I have that your mission is material. You are here for a material purpose. This does not mean that you are not spiritual. In fact, it may mean quite the opposite. It may mean that you have developed in other lives the sort of spiritual capacities and connection that mean you can focus on the material. We are in the material world, after all, for a reason. And so depending upon how advanced your spiritual development is, you may or may not be needing to focus on spiritual, you may be focusing on material. So it's certainly not meant to indicate that this is a material rather than spiritual purpose. With the Ace of Coins, it suggests that whatever creatively you are doing in any of those realms, you connect to Source by having the vision and bringing something into being and taking the blessing that always comes with aces. Aces are sort of undifferentiated energy in relation to whatever the suit is. And so this is the blessing of something new that you can bring in that is material in some way. It connects directly to Keter, which is the first Sephiroth. It is the divine consciousness. All aces do that. So that's also one of the reasons why there's a kind of a blessing around it. It means that there is inspiration. So this suggests that you are getting divine inspiration. So even if my pile one feels that so much of what you're focusing on is material, there is a divine inspiration around what you're doing. So given that, let's go to the next Sephiroth, and that is Hod. And that is about sincerity. It's about living your truth. So the question that we ask for this is, how do you live your truth? So you have the Seven of Cups. The Seven of Cups traditionally is about idealism. It is about dreams. It's about having a wide variety of emotional options before you. The challenge of the Seven of Cups is working out what is real and ideal and what is illusory. So an important thing for you, and it may be part of what was the energy that was an issue in a past life potentially, is being able to be very clear and honest with yourself about what it is that you are bringing in, what is yours, what you're doing with it, and what may be more of a dream or maybe not as clear. So clarity is very important, and particularly emotional clarity around what you do, and emotional integrity and truth with others. And the Seven of Cups can be the absolute ideal. I do think that many of my Pile 1 are highly idealistic. Another reason why I feel like whatever you're doing materially has some form of beauty and balance and social justice to it. But you live your truth by being very clear with yourself about what is real and what is just illusory or a dream. This card connects to Nesach, which is in fact the next one we'll look at, and it is about how you are victorious. So again, not only living your truth and being very, very clear about what's real and very self-regulated around your ego with that sort of energy helps you win as well. It helps you be successful. So I do think that maybe some of what happened in a past life, or even if you've been struggling in this life to really start to bring something into being, it's got something to do with that sense of what is real and achievable and pragmatic compared to what maybe is ideal or a bit illusory. It could also be suggesting that you attract to you people who aren't necessarily that self-aware and self-honest. And so part of you living your truth, you need to kind of reflect truth back at them and stand in that truth, but also be aware about who you connect with on that level. So there's a kind of a warning in there for you, but there's also the blessing of the ideal if you do stand in that truth. So let's ask for the next one, which, as I said, is Nesach, and it's all about victory. Where can you succeed and win in your life purpose? And again, we have coins. Again, we have something in the field of something material. And it's very interesting, Pile 1, because my sense about the Five of Coins reversed there was that it was moving towards the Six, that part of what you are meant to be doing in this life is building a kind of material legacy that is generous and caring with others. Again, while I feel like there could be a political, social aspect to what you're doing in some way, certainly you are meant to succeed materially in this life. If you are suffering from any reversals or challenges, this is very much saying that something that you will bring in will tip the scale and will bring that in for you. And it is saying that you win by being generous and reciprocating. So that suggests strong networks with others. It suggests collaboration, but collaboration with the right people, remember, not ones that maybe are not clear or not honest. So collaboration with the right people, generosity of spirit is how you win. it connects to Tippereth. And as I said before, Tippereth, which is the connection for your Malkuth manifestation, is about balance, beauty and joy. Again, I get the sense that for some of you, this material thing is not so much business and politics, so for some it will be, but for others of you, it will be around some sort of artistic expression that creates a flow of money to and from you and a collaborative flow to and from you. So let's move to Tippereth. And it's interesting here too, just in terms of energy, we've got Nessark, that connects to Nessark, that connects to Tippereth, and the next one we're looking at is Tippereth. So that sense gives me the feeling that you are moving in the right direction, that Spirit is affirming that you are heading in the right direction already, pile one. So let's ask, where do you find joy and beauty? So you have the world. So part of that is in completing what you were meant to complete, because the world here is reversed. This is why I feel like you were stopped in a previous life, or even in this life you may have been halted already, but you are meant to bring into being what this thing is, whatever it is. There's a real sense of artistry, as I say, about this. Again, though it does talk about administrative intelligence, so it also picks up the business and the government side of things as well. But it feels a bit to me artistically like someone like Vincent van Gogh, who created beautiful works but did not get to feel and experience and have the joy of the recognition in that life. I feel as though there's artists who are coming to this reading, and I feel that you are meant to complete that and get that recognition, and potentially worldwide recognition with that card. And that's where you find the joy, when you really see what you're bringing into the world coming to fruition. And for others, as I say, it's more around business and so forth. It connects back to material connections of Malkuth and Yesod and the foundation. So this very much says that the world card, the completion, goes back to first principles. It goes back to what are we doing in the world, and how does that connect us to the divine. So it's a very strong sense here that the material things that you are doing in the world and the divine inspiration for that is key to joy and beauty for you. So next we go to Geburah, and that is about discipline and self-control, because no matter how well developed we are, there is always room for self-discipline, self-knowledge, self-regulation. So the question here is, what do you need to control or discipline to bring about the best outcome here for your life path? So we've got the Ace of Wands. It gives us another divine inspiration connection to Keter. It's another blessing. So it's interesting that a blessing turns up here. And one of the things that's particularly interesting is the Ace of Wands is that uprush of creative energy, but it's in a sense almost undifferentiated compared, say, to the Ace of Coins. And we had the Knight of Wands, remember, at the beginning, and the one thing around that was sometimes sort of rushing into things before you really worked out the material implications. So I feel that the key message here is you will be inspired on so many levels around your business, around your politics or social consciousness, around your creativity, whatever it is. The thing that you need to be able to control and self-regulate is working out which of the things that come to you, which of you probably channel an enormous amount of creative inspiration or spiritual inspiration in some way or other. But it's working out which are the ones and in what order to do them so that you can bring something about. The one risk that you could have with this, with so much energy coming to you, is you could spread yourself too thin, pile one. So it's very important to work out what is the one that's going to help you get to the completion of a legacy, of a purpose, not just every kind of shiny and sparkling thing that comes along that could divert you. On the other side of that, there is Hesed, and that is about kindness more than anything else. Kindness, honouring others, and so forth. So the question here is, while you pursue your life path, and particularly since it's saying collaboration is going to be a key thing for you, how do you honour others? How are you kind to others? So you've got the Nine of Swords. The Nine of Swords is, in traditional tarot, a card of anxiety, and mental anxiety. So I suspect that you honour others by being very empathic to their kind of spiritual emotional and intellectual pain and anxiety. There's a sense here that you really want to help others. You honour them by understanding the pain. This is where, again, I get this sense that some of you are around social justice or something like that, even if you are creating it through an artistic medium. There is a sense that you honour others by understanding and empathising with pain at quite a deep level. It's another reason why I feel that most of my Pile 1 have possibly in past lives done quite a lot spiritually, and that's why this time around they're focusing really on the material, because there's a sort of very refined empathy and understanding for others. You may sometimes over-vex yourself with this, though. You may sometimes feel, can I do something? Can I say something? Would it hurt somebody? You may be overly sensitive around that sort of thing. And that might be why we had the Seven of Cups coming down here, which is that sense that sometimes you're going to come across people who aren't really on the up and up. And it's okay to recognize that. You don't have to forgive and go along with people who are not being honest with you. So I think there's also that energy. It's getting that balance right. It connects to Yesod as well, so that's connecting back to the material thing. So if there is any doubt about whether you should be empathizing and connecting with somebody else, connect it back to whether or not it's creating the thing that brings about your life purpose. So next we go to a Sephiroth, which you may not always see when you look at the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life diagram, because some show it and some don't. And it's called the Art, and it is called the invisible or hidden Sephiroth. So it isn't really an emanation or an aspect of the divine. It seems to be more a passageway between this element of the divine and then getting to what they call the supernal triangle, which is where you connect to a much more purified essence of the divine consciousness. So for the purposes of this reading, I see Da'at as being a passageway, a place that you go through to get there when you've gone through your life and you're returning to the divine. So almost the place of the life review. So for this particular reading, I ask, what if you were into art now? And of course, the likelihood of any of you being there anytime soon is extremely remote, so I'm not suggesting that. But just in the sense of the energies at the moment, if you were into art now, what would you be celebrating, and what might you potentially need to face, go through, refine, or shed? So again, we come to the Wands energy. So the Princess of Wands is like the Page of Wands in other tarot decks. It's all about action again. I think what that is saying is right now, you have still to develop all the actions that you need. You're probably a little bit further than you would be giving yourself credit for if you're into art now, but you're still sorting out, I think, what are the key artistic or inspirational side of what you're doing that you want to bring into being. What should be in this Ace of Coins? What should be there? So I think it's just saying that would be an issue about, did you go in the right direction and really maximize the materiality of this, or did you get a little bit diverted along the way sometimes, would be one of the things that you might be looking at. But I think you would also be celebrating the fact that you took action, that you just kept keeping on so that you could bring something into being. It again connects back this time to Malkuth, so these two Wands energies very much connect. And as I say, that's why I feel, because you've got the Knight of Wands down here now, that you're a little bit further along than you'd give yourself credit for. So that suggests that my Pile 1 are a little bit self-effacing by nature. And again, that's something to be aware of. Be honest with yourself. Don't undersell yourself down here with the Seven of Cups either. When you're looking at yourself, don't be overly critical. But certainly there would be a sense of celebrating action. And the only potential thing that you might consider was, did I use all my energy and my action to my greatest good and to the best outcome? So from there, we go to the first of the three in the supernal triangle, which is Binah. And that is it's called the mother. It's sort of a bit like the divine feminine. It's not necessarily gender so much as those sort of aspects that we think of spiritually. It is a Sephiroth or emanation about understanding and empathy. So the question for this is, how do you find and understand empathy for others and freedom for yourself? And we have the Queen of Swords. So this is saying this is very important because it is in fact Binah. So this is, you have a card now that is in its proper house. So I think that doubles down on the importance here. And the Queen of Swords, I think, is connecting over here to the Knight of Swords. So it is that understanding on an intellectual level of the philosophy or the underpinnings of helping others with pain and understanding where people are coming from. The Queen of Swords can be sometimes a bit of a severe card. It's not always, but there is that sense of bringing compassion to any severity in terms of judgments, because I think your intentions are very pure, and possibly if you start to pick up on others who aren't, then it really is getting that balance right to forgive and connect with those who don't mean anything wrong, but being able to separate yourself, to have the wisdom to know, when do I bring empathy and compassion to this scenario, and when do I cut people out because in fact it's not a good energy and it's of ill intent, or at least a very selfish and predatory intent. So there's something in all of that. You very much process your sense of empathy and compassion through a philosophy. So you have a strong philosophy, and that's where you will find that with the Queen of Swords there. On the other side, we have Chokhmah, and Chokhmah is called the father. It's a bit like divine masculine, but again, not exactly that. It's just that sense of undifferentiated wisdom. That's what it's talking about. It's the first emanation outside of Keter, which is the divine consciousness. So it is wisdom in its most pure form, but not necessarily leavened and balanced by compassion. So as you can sort of see as we go through this, there's sort of like each emanation kind of adds a flavour and colour to the next. So Chokhmah is all about wisdom. So the question here is, what wisdom do you need? So we have the Queen of Wands. So that's connecting back to Binah again. It's very much saying that it is important in all the decisions you make and your wisdom that you do bring that compassion to it. It's again suggesting that there's a lot of creative energy around you. Part of this, and I think it goes right back to the Seven of Cups, pile one, part of this is about being really honest with yourself and honest about other people, and getting that sort of balance right. Because the Queen of Wands is really interesting. She is very self-actualized and self-confident. So certainly having the wisdom to know that you have what you need to do this, to be confident, is part of the wisdom of bringing this about. But in nearly all tarot decks where you see a depiction of people for Queen of Wands, you will see with the Queen of Wands some form of feline familiar or companion. It's often a black cat. In this particular pack, it's a leopard. That symbolically represents the shadow. And what it says is part of the reason that the Queen of Wands is so self-actualized is that she has a very good sense of her shadow, and therefore also of the shadow of others. And that is then leavened through Binah for compassion with yourself and compassion with others. So again, I think this is saying that you need to understand who is the best people to be with, to work with, and so forth, to bring this particular thing into being, and to never ever let yourself be overshadowed by somebody who wants to take something from you or anything in those sort of areas. It's very important to stand in that strength. So lastly, we go to Keter. So that is the first Sephiroth. It is the divine consciousness. So given where you are at the moment and the balance of energies here, the question is for the divine, what would the divine want to tell you now to really help you get this balance right and to set you on the right path, or to continue on the right path, as I think you're already on it, to really achieve your life's purpose? So you have the Hanged Man. The Hanged Man is a very interesting card on many levels in the tarot, because it means a number of things, and we'll get down to the connection where it connects here, but it sometimes means that you can be a little bit stubborn. So one of the things that the divine would be saying is don't be stubborn, be flexible enough to work with stuff, bearing in mind what your mind can tell you about the people that you're dealing with and who is the right person to deal with. But don't get stuck, sort of, and maybe also in the choice about what inspiration to deal with and where to put your time. Don't be sort of just one-eyed about it, because it may be that some of the other inspiration is coming for a reason. It's really being as discerning as you can. And the other aspect of the Hangman is a different perspective. So it may be saying that for some of my pile one, there is a different perspective you need to bring to something you're doing, whether it is something that you're already developing or whether it is the people that you're working with. The divine is saying, look at things from a different perspective, from a different point of view, and help that make your decisions about what to do. This card connects to Gevara, which is that self-control, and Hod, which is being true. So the energies here, the Seven of Cups around what your ideals are and what isn't true, and the Ace of Wands about where you put your energy is somehow very important to this. And so I think that Spirit is saying get the balance right. You don't have to be completely one-eyed, but you do need to think about how you use your energy, because so much comes through to you. In a sense, so much is expected of you, but you're also expected to get that balance right. And in a way, it feels like the balance between this, the balance of the philosophy of what you're doing and the artistic beauty of what you're doing in whatever form it is. So I think that that's a very good prospect for you. I don't think there's a lot. I think you're heading in the right direction, but I think there's just so much coming through that the divine wants to make sure that you use your energy wisely. What I want to finish with is a couple of cards from a very profound deck called Soul Cards. It's unusual. It doesn't have particular meanings for it. It's just very, very profound imagery. So I will tell you what I think these say to me for this reading, but I would suggest you maybe pause the video before clicking off at the end and just contemplate them for yourself, because they sort of remind me a bit of dream imagery. And so it's very important that people interpret their own dreams in terms of what symbols mean to them as much as anything else. So the cards that I have for you are so firstly, this card looks to me like you are this. I feel like you are this particular animal here. It's a kind of instinctive card. The animal looks kind and curious. Both about, this is the tree of life, so both about what you are going to build and grow in the tree of life, but there's also a person in this card, so I think it's also about who you will work with. So I think it's picking all of that up. There's so much sense of growth and ability here, and as I say, such a gentle curiosity. And I think that's the balancing of the Queen of Swords and the Queen of Wands there in terms of your connections. And this also suggests to me that there are the right connections for you. I do think that some of my pile one in a past life or even earlier in this life, you have had the wrong connections and that has really stopped you from achieving something. But I think that this is the divine's affirmation here that you can find the right people, that there is a mirroring of energy, a mirroring, I think, of philosophy and of artistic and creative energy in whatever form it is. So that's what I get from those cards. But as I say, you may get other impressions from them. So by all means, pause the video and see what else it says to you. Beyond that, I hope that that resonated for you. I hope that it gave you some good advice for your life purpose, pile one. If you did enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. And if you have any comments on this, I'd be delighted and fascinated to hear about it in the comments. Beyond that, I hope I see you in future readings. Welcome, pile two, to your reading. These three cards were under the crystal that you chose, and they're from the True Black Tarot. And I'm using them to get a sense of the overarching narrative of your life path, and then we'll move to the Kabbalah spread so that we can see how it's really playing out at the moment for you. What these cards tell me is that this is my philosophical or legal or political warrior group, really, and you are naturally a leader in this space. And I'd say that it's been built up in past lives and certainly is being very much put in place in this life. I suspect that many of you have studied in those sort of areas or work in those sort of areas, or you're drawn to what is just and fair in some way. And you inspire people. You bring people who are like you to your cause. Sometimes the impact of that is a bit exhausting. sometimes I think you feel like, well, somebody else could take up the leadership banner and lead everyone. But I think that part of your life path is that you have to keep on with that because you are meant to be the leader. Justice here very much suggests, as I say, that there is something either literally about the legal world or about political or social justice or about justice and balance in some way within even relationships. There could be, for instance, somebody here who in a relationship sense is a legal advisor around family matters. So it's quite broad about what you could be doing, but we have the Three of Wands, and in this deck it's really about being the leader. This has a bird diving into the water and other birds are following. So anything you do in this life, you are likely to have followers, you are likely to have people who see the good in what you do and want to be part of it. But as I say, sometimes you just feel a bit overwhelmed by it, and you may well sometimes have some real battles on your hands. But I think you're more than able to do it. You're like this animal here who's bearing up and getting ready to take on the fight if necessary. So there's something key in that area that you are meant to do in this life, pile 2. So let's move to the Kabbalah spread. Now, I'm using a particular tarot deck called the Tarot of Magical Correspondences for this, and I've chosen it because not only does it have your traditional tarot, but it also has the tarot pathways to the Sephiroth in the Kabbalah. And what that allows me to do is see the connections across emanations depending upon where the cards land. And certainly if a card lands in a pathway for the particular Sephiroth position here, it very much doubles down on how important that is. So for each of these Sephiroth, starting as I said in the introduction with Malkuth, the Earth Sephiroth, which is the 10th Sephiroth technically in the Kabbalah, I have a question. So the question for Malkuth is, what are you manifesting right now in relation to your spiritual path? And I don't use reversals in this pack for this reading, by the way, because I think there's enough additional information with it to not need that kind of extra clarification. So this is suggesting that most of my pile 2 are manifesting a lot on their own at the moment. It's like even though you're a natural leader, something is making you either contemplate what you've been doing. Maybe you've actually had a few battles and you are a bit tired and you're looking at what you do next. Or some of you may still be studying, or you may be literally working out in a very complex and strange world like we live in at the moment. What are your beliefs? What do you want to achieve? It's a very quiet, withdrawn sort of energy. So it's not as though most of you, for whatever reason, even if you've been battling, it doesn't feel like right now you're battling. And it's a very important time. And I think that Spirit is saying it's going to be important for you to find periods of time to yourself because of the high degree of energy that you otherwise use. So I think it's saying you're doing a kind of review at this point and that's not a problem. That's just literally because the question is where you are right now. You're reviewing what you really believe in and what you want to go forward with. This card also connects to Hesed, and Hesed is all about kindness. And we will get to that Sephiroth. So it's how we honor others. So I do feel that for some of you, you may have been through a few battles and you may have come out victorious, or maybe you've had some reversals as well. It could be either. But I think it's really making you contemplate the emotional and spiritual impacts almost on other people. Like, what are the right battles to be in? What are the right battle tactics to be in as well too? You would be very clever, very strategic, but I think that you also have a very strong moral core. So I think this is saying you're really considering your actions and your learning and your life path as much as anything in relation to kindness and empathy for others. So let's have a look at the next one, which is Hesed, and that is the Sephiroth that is almost like the transition point between Malkuth, which is where we are living at the moment, Earth, and then the divine realms, and they call it the foundation. So the question that I have for this spread around that is, how do you connect to Source? Okay, so now we have the Hermit. This is really interesting, Pile 2, because as I say, you look like a spiritual and a legal warrior, and I think you are, but you are deeply spiritual. Most of this really comes from a very strong spiritual connection and a really strong philosophy. It also suggests, again, that you do need time out. When you have time out, when you are contemplating like the Four of Swords, then you can access the divine through the energy of the hermit, which is the mystic, the spiritual connection. But you need time out. I think this is why we've got the Nine of Wands up here. This is why it's very important for you to take the time out and replenish, because that's how you reconnect. And whatever your legal or kind of pragmatic learnings are, there's also a lot of learning around you, either in this life or from others, around the spiritual, and that is where you connect. In this particular card, the connection of the hermit is between Tippereth, which is about joy and beauty, with Hesed, which is about kindness again. So we get this kindness. You are a very, very kind, empathic person, and you would feel spiritually cut off if you could not equate what you do to being kind and empathic with others. So don't lose that. Make sure you give yourself the time to do it. It's almost as though there's a little bit of a caution here for you that if you don't take the time out, you might disengage from that and you might get a little bit less tolerant of people. It may be that some of my pile too, because of what you work in and what you deal with, you might deal with people who it's hard to like sometimes, but your basic spiritual direction is about empathy. So I think as long as you give yourself the time out, you don't exhaust yourself, then that side of things will not become prevalent for you. So the next Sephiroth is Hod, and that is about sincerity. So the question then is, where do you live, or how do you live your truth? We've got justice twice. Many of my people here, I think, as I said, will be involved in something that has to do with legal frameworks, regulatory frameworks, that side of things. Or it may be that it is saying at the moment that there is something to do with your life path that is connected to some sort of legal case or some sort of legal campaign, even if you aren't a lawyer. But there is a real sense there that you understand justice. And if it isn't pure justice, as in legal, it's probably social justice. You are in your truth when you know that what you are doing is just, which very much, again, connects back to an intellectual and spiritual center. That's how you live your truth. You could not, I don't think my pile two could knowingly do something that was illegal or even kind of really immoral or unethical. It would be very, very hard for you to do it because you are very true to that side of things. This particular card connects again to Tippereth, just like the Hermit, so joy and beauty. So there's joy and beauty to you in the truth and in justice. And then to Gevurah, which is about self-control. So again, I think sometimes my pile two deal with people that are very hard to like. And sometimes that it is something you have to balance when you're looking at what you're battling. But you will always go back to what is the truth of the ethics around this, what is the issue? You're not the sort of person when they say, play the bat and not the player, or there's some saying like that in sport, which is effectively saying you deal with an issue, not with the person. Even if the person's really irritating, if their issue is right, you deal with it. And if you don't agree with the issue, you don't attack the person, you don't do ad hominems and so forth. So that's very much you, pile two. So on the other side, if we're living in our truth and we have our connection to the divine, there is Nesach, and that is about victory. So given you are a battler, you are a warrior, I think, where do you find victory? Where can you succeed and win? So we have the Princess of Coins, which is like the Page of Coins. That suggests in material matters that have to do with resources in one way or another. Again, a sense that you are dealing with social justice or legal justice, or potentially within a business. It might be that you just bring an excellent mind and a sense of integrity to something in a business, your own business or an organisation that you work in. But you have victory around material things and resources, either your own or others. And that is how you can measure the victory of what you've done. It's not so much the warm inner glow or the pat on the back. It's really what is the material impact of what you've done. It connects back to Malkuth, so it connects back to this energy of what do you internally feel, what is your internal wisdom, but it's material. So you see, that's the Four of Swords, that's intellectual, this is material. So it does suggest to me that there are yet some battles to win and material outcomes to get to bring about what you have contemplated and understood that you need to do. So then we go to Tippereth, and as I said before, we've had connections to Tippereth already. This is about where you find joy and beauty in life and in your life path. So you've got the Eight of Coins or the Eight of Pentacles. Again, it suggests that you'll find joy, beauty, and the balance through material outcomes, definitely. It also suggests that you have an innate love of learning and love of building your skill. The more good you get at what you're doing, which you will know by the outcomes that you get, and the more learned you are, which both spiritually and also I think academically, that brings you real joy. That makes you know that you are going to win, I think. I think if you know your stuff backwards, and I think you do, you don't rush into a battle until you really know your stuff. It comes from a very deep love of knowledge and a love of learning. It connects to Hod, which is, again, where you live your truth. So I think many of you will be, that learning is around things that have to do with justice in one way or another. So then we move to Gevurah, which is, as I've said before, because this connects to that, is about self-control and discipline. So all of us need some self-control and discipline. No matter how learned we are, no matter how spiritually connected, we all have our own egos, we have our own drives, we have things that we need to regulate in ourselves. So the question here is, what do you need to control or discipline in yourself? Oops, shouldn't be upside down. So we have the Ace of Wands. The good thing about this is that you will be having help, divine help, around controlling the self-control that you need, because it connects to Ketha, which is the divine consciousness itself. All aces in this deck do. It is a sense of undifferentiated energy coming down, a blessing. So there is a blessing around self-control for you. I think it's one that you've deserved because you've done the work, but it still is a blessing. But the thing that you do need to control when you have a Wands card, and particularly one so early in the suit here, is making the right determinations about where to put your energy and what battles to take on. There would be the potential risk with the Ace of Wands there and the direct connection to the divine of having a lot of information, a lot of options and a lot of causes, and really trying to work out where best to put those causes. I think that the clues for you about what to do with that, we're already starting to see. It's where you really know your stuff. It's where you can get a material outcome. But there is an issue here where you might be, as you are a bit of a warrior, the minute that you hear about an injustice, you might want to get straight into the fray. So this is the thing you need to balance, because a lot will come to you. A lot of followers will come to you. A lot of demands will come to you. It's a matter about being discerning, I would say, in where you put your energy. So on the other side is the other one that we've talked about before, which is Hesed, and that is about kindness. So this is about how do you honour and how are you kind to others. So this is a very powerful card to have in this place, and it doesn't surprise me because it's very much part of who you are. The world suggests to me that you are kind to others by having a very complete, well thought out and truly manifested philosophy. You walk the talk, I guess is what I would say. You are kind to others because you do complete, you do what you're going to say. You do stick the course even when, with that energy, it's exhausting. So you are someone who completes things. You don't walk away when it gets too hard. The cards that it connects to, and it also suggests that some of you may be known on the world stage for how you help others. You may be, a great human rights lawyer, for instance, who's famous, that kind of energy. It connects to Malkuth and Hesed, so it comes back to what the hermit has learnt spiritually and what you have contemplated. So when you complete things, they're in alignment with your spiritual purpose. And that, I think, is because it comes from a kindness. It comes from an empathy. So after Hesed, we go to what they call the invisible Sephiroth, which is Da'at. You won't, excuse me, you won't always see Da'at on every depiction of the Kabbalah. Sometimes they show it, sometimes they don't, because it's not a Sephiroth as such. It's more a passageway or a place that you go through before you reach the supernal triangle. And so for the purposes of this reading, I see it a bit like the life review. If tomorrow you were into art, if you had passed on, and I don't believe anybody listening to this is going to pass on tomorrow, it's more just a sense of what happens with the art. When you have passed on, let's put it that way, whatever year and whatever day that is, when you reach the art, I think it's like the life review, and that's how I'm seeing it for this particular reading. So the question that I have is, when you are there, what will you celebrate and what will you potentially review, refine, and want to sort of shed or face? One of the things that this is telling me, pile 2, because the Nine of Swords is a card of kind of intellectual anxiety, is that one of the things you may need to shed when you have done your battles is all the cumulative levels of anxiety and intellectual unhappiness that maybe you've absorbed by being this person who is battling for others. I think that there's almost like you will be carrying the weight of much of what you've done, even if you've succeeded, and I think you've got every reason to believe you'll succeed. I think that this is saying there's a bit of a toll on you. And one of the reasons for even having this in this reading is to give you an opportunity to think about that. So I think it is good that we got the Four of Swords here in the Hermit. I think that you do know you need to sort of get away and defrag, so to speak, from things. But I think it would be saying, don't accumulate so much of the pain of others because you're so empathic that you're almost shedding that more than anything else when you move through, once you've done your life purpose. The other thing that you may consider is whether or not you were too anxious sometimes. Like, did you get the balance right for yourself? In terms of celebration, I think it would be that you would be celebrating the wins that you might have had to make life easier for people, particularly around intellectual matters. So then we go to Binar, who is the mother emanation, a bit like the divine feminine. It's not exactly that probably, but a bit like that in a sense. It's the emanation of wisdom that is tempered by compassion and empathy. So the question here is, how do you find and understand compassion and true freedom? This is interesting, pile 2, because it's the first Cups card we've seen. And it's interesting because it connects to Binar in that sense, because that has that kind of Cups energy to it. Though the card itself is about victory. So it connects your compassion to your sense of victory. But it is interesting that it's Cups. And Cups, Seven of Cups is an interesting card. It can be the ideal, the idealist. Your compassion makes you an idealist, and there's nothing wrong with that. So that's very positive. But sometimes the Seven of Cups can also create confusion and illusion. And when we connect it here with the Ace of Wands about where you use your energy, really think carefully about what causes you take on, because it is possible on certain occasions you may be diverted out of your sense of empathy for others to causes that are not as just as you think they are, that you might put a lot of energy into and then find there's some other underlying aspect there that you weren't aware of. Whether the person is being deliberately duplicitous or whether they're just not very clear and emotionally rather dramatic. So I think that this is saying part of the wisdom you need is how to use your empathy, which is profound, in a way that is directed towards the best outcomes for your life path. On the other side, we have Hokmah, and Hokmah is like the Divine Father or the Divine Masculine in a sense. It's about wisdom straight from Keter, so it isn't yet differentiated by empathy. It is just pure wisdom, so it's more philosophical than anything. So the question here is, where do you find wisdom on that kind of philosophical level? And then we have another Cups card. So I do think that Spirit, the divine, is saying here that you have so much intellectual power, so much courage, and so much dedication to outcomes, learning, and so forth, that it is important not to lose the heart as well. You're driven by the heart, but it's maybe you almost take that for granted. This connects back to Binar, so it is very much saying that the wisdom that you have is meant to be used with the tempering of compassion. And I do believe that my pile 2 do, but it is saying don't forget your heart. And don't forget also the celebration and the connection with others that isn't about you being their leader or being the person who takes up their cause, but also the capacity to celebrate and enjoy the company of others just for the sake of the company of others. It may also be saying for some of my pile 2 that you could potentially, if you aren't thinking this through, particularly with the Hermit down here as well, you may deny yourself, a romantic relationship or that sort of family and that kind of thing because of I'm on a cause and so forth. This is fine if that's what you've decided you want to do and that's where your heart is, but it may be also saying part of the wisdom is to get that balance right. So the last card in this particular structure is Keter. So that is the divine consciousness. And so the question I have for this spread and for my pile 2 now is, what does the divine want to tell you right now with all that we've seen to best help you achieving your soul and your life purpose? This is interesting. That's the same card that came up for another of the readings in this position. It's the Hanged Man. The Hanged Man is an interesting card in tarot. It kind of means a couple of things normally. It's very spiritual. But the first thing that it tends to mean is that you can get stuck or get stubborn about things. So part of what the divine is saying again, and I think it is about where you use your energy, is don't feel you have to chase down every cause if you find it isn't quite what it is. Don't think that you have to win at all costs. It's not about proving that you win every single time. It's about using that wisdom and intelligence to get the best outcomes, the ones that most align with your spiritual purpose. The other thing with the Hanged Man is it's about having a different perspective. So it may be saying that you can progress things even further with a different perspective. It might even be picking up, don't forget your heart, which seemed to be part of the message here. So it could be either of those things. In this particular deck, it connects with Hod, which is your truth, and with Geburah, which is your discipline. So I think it's something about how taking a new look at the perspective about how you use your energy and what causes you take up. Because your capacity to win is prodigious. It's just, is it always going to be the right cause? And how would you best know it was the right cause? And I think to me, this really explains why the first card here was the Four of Swords. I think that most of my pile 2 know this. You know that you need to go into a quiet place and contemplate and really think it through. So I think that's fine, but I do wonder whether the divine is saying don't forget your heart and your own enjoyment as well in the midst of all of this. So pile 2, I want to finish up with a couple of cards from a very profound deck called Soul Cards, and it doesn't have any specific meaning for any of the cards. It's really just the imagery. It's a bit like dream imagery. So I'll tell you what I get from the cards when I lay them down, but you may want to pause the video before clicking off at the end of the reading and just contemplate them for yourself. Because I always think with things like dream imagery or dream interpretation, your response and what you think symbols mean is going to be much more profound than anybody who's reading or interpreting for you. But as I say, I will give you my idea, and then you can choose whether you want to look further into it. So the cards for you are this and this. So I think this is the balance of what Spirit is saying, particularly in the latter part of this reading. To me, I feel like this is this great empathy and great caring. That feels like you being very careful and very, very kind and very well-intentioned with people. and really connecting to Binah's energy. That feels very much like the divine feminine. You don't have to be a woman for this. It's just that kind of energy. So taking care, looking after somebody. And then I think I think that's what you are internally. What you appear to others is this radiant being that sets other people free and helps them. That's why I think right from the beginning it looked like you would have followers. It looked like you would have people who wanted to be like you because of this incredible energy that you radiate. And what I like about it is you're not holding these people back. You're actually setting them free. So I think that all suggests that you're getting the balance of this right. But as I say, you may have a different view about what these cards mean. And if so, that's obviously going to be more profound for you. So I'd suggest that you do pause the video if you want to contemplate them a bit more. Beyond that, I do hope that you enjoyed the reading, and if so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you have any comments on this about how it relates to your life, I'd be fascinated to hear about it in the comments. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, Pile 3, to your reading. These first 3 cards are from the True Black Tarot, and they were under the crystal that you chose, and they represent a kind of overarching narrative for what the nature of your spiritual and life purpose is. These are a very profound set of cards, I have to say. You've got a card that is in the True Black that is not in the typical tarot. And to me, it gives you that sense of having completed the great work, the great journey, this great spiritual development, and then starting again. So you've got the Ouroboros in a sense, that though it's not eating its own tail, circling a newborn child. And it's really interesting because it's next to the Fool, but the Fool is reversed, which also suggests a sense of knowledge and having completed something. So you are meant to be doing something new, building upon what you have learnt, and what you've learnt is considerable, but you're very clear this time around. You're possibly in a past life, or even if this relates to something earlier in your life, there was a time where you were a bit naive, a little bit trusting and innocent, and possibly it stopped you from being able to fully bring it into being, because we've got the 10 of Wands here, but it is reversed. So that suggests that there is a new rush of energy coming through in this life, or now in this life, if you can relate to something getting halted or not quite coming into being, and which sort of robbed you of some innocence and made you sort of be a little bit more pragmatic about the world. Whatever it is, there's a new rush of energy coming in, and you are very, very much meant to bring in something new. It could be in any field of work or creativity or even relationship. It may even, for some, be concerned to bring in a child, literally, with those sort of energies. That part of your purpose is to bring in and nurture a child who is going to be important in a particular way. But I think for most of you, it's going to be about your own life and what you bring into being in a way that is more wise now than possibly an earlier attempt. So we're going to now do the Kabbalah spread, and that is each Sephiroth, as I said in the introduction. And for each Sephiroth, starting from Malkuth, which is actually the 10th, and moving back up to Keter, which is the first Sephiroth, Malkuth is the earth. For each of these cards, each of these positions, I have a particular question, so it's very structured. And I'm using a deck called the Tarot of Magical Correspondences because it, apart from the typical tarot meanings, it also shows the connections and pathways between the tarot card and the Kabbalah. So it gives me a sense about where a potential card comes up that is connected to the Sephiroth position in the reading, and that will be very important, or where there's a process and a connection between them. You'll get a sense of this as we go along. So the first question, and the first card for the spread for Malkuth, which is Earth, is what are you manifesting now in relation to this new thing you're meant to bring in to the world? So it looks to me like you're dealing with a bit of pain at the moment around it. So it may very well be that many of my pile 3 have already tried to bring something in. You have that sense of destiny, and there is a sense of destiny around you, but something didn't quite work. Maybe somebody did you wrong in some way, or maybe there was a relationship that kind of set you off course and you're going through the separation of it. There's something. There could even be, if there's a child involved, something to do with a separation that you're now going to need to work out. But as I say, that's a very specific reading. It may only fit a very small number of people who come to the reading over time. But I do think that where you're at the moment is going through and working through the pain of something, whether it's a memory from a past life, whether it's something from childhood or early parts of your career. You've separated from something. And I think it is part of this. You've become wise to something, and it has been a bit painful. So I think that Spirit is saying that you are still meant to achieve what it is that you want to achieve. So if you are in a position of feeling pain and a bit of dismay, this is a temporary thing. This card is connected to Binah, which is the divine feminine, the divine mother, which is much higher in the tree of life. We'll get to that later, but it's all about compassion and empathy. It suggests that maybe part of what has created the pain or the dismay is that you are naturally very empathic. And I just sense that for some of you, there's been a relationship or a colleague or collaborator or something that has not really behaved in the way that would be appropriate, and it has been painful. So I think Spirit is simply saying you won't be stuck there forever. That is just a phase, and to remember and keep to your own sense of compassion for others and even understanding what has happened. You can be worldly wise, but you can keep to your compassion. So the next card in this is Hesod or Yesod. It is what's called the foundation in the Kabbalah. It is sort of the gateway between Malkuth, which is earth, and the divine, so the divine realms. And so I put a question of how do you connect to source at this position of this reading. So the Knight of Swords. And this is interesting because we've got the Three of Swords and the Knight of Swords. So we've already got a very strong sense around this and around you of the intellect and of communication, and potentially of someone who moves very, very fast. This energy is very, very fast thinker, fast decider, ahead of their time, all of those things. It may be part of the reason that you are feeling some pain at the moment is that people don't keep up with you. So just be aware of that could be part of it. The other thing with the Knight of Swords is that being different and unique and sometimes eccentric in what you do is part of how you are meant to bring about this new thing. And so again, maybe not everybody's going to be able to get it at first or go along with it. So part of connecting to source is keeping that divine inspiration going and not letting the pain of people who don't understand getting in the way. It connects to Tippereth. Tippereth is about joy and beauty. So it says that you have a true joy and a true beauty in the connection to the divine and in the inspiration, and to not lose that, to not, as I say, get discouraged, because you are getting information channeled down to you. You are meant to be a trailblazer and unique, and you won't always be understood at first, but keep going with it. So the next position is Hod, and that is about sincerity. So it's the question that I have for this position in this reading is, where do you live your truth? Where can you live and express your truth? And we have the Four of Wands. So that is with friends, family, others, teammates. This is one of the issues I think that might be part of this pain that I'm seeing here. I think that you naturally are drawn to collaborating with others, working with others. You are very much the creative force in what you do, but you like to work with others and you like to collaborate. And that's probably why it's painful when people don't understand it or people do you wrong. But for you, it is very true that this is not just about your ego and your thing. It's about something that is developed together, and that is part of who you are truly within. And so you're sort of the person who generally, if you were creative, for instance, wouldn't be that fussed about whether you had the name on the book. You'd like to have the team working with things and so forth. And that is a beautiful and lovely quality. But what you've probably learnt with the wisdom of the Fool reversed is that some people take advantage of that and other people sometimes don't appreciate what that is, or even don't understand it. Some of you may be in organisations where the only way to get on is to self-promote, and you really want to be a team player. So there could be a disconnect around your truth and where you are at the moment that's creating this Three of Swords. This connects to Hesed, and Hesed is about kindness and empathy for others again. So I do think that your connection with others comes from a very pure place, but not everybody, I think, that you've been around of recent times has come from quite the same pure place. So given you've got a bit of a battle, the next one is Nesach, and that is about victory. So the question for that position is, where do you succeed? Where do you win? Where do you find victory? And this is the Three of Coins or the Three of Pentacles. So it is creating the foundation to build on. It's not sitting in the pain. It's looking at what you learn and what you create. You are definitely meant to create something in this lifetime. That is, you are meant to do something that is ahead of its time, that is new in whatever field you work with. The other part of it is connecting to Binah. So connecting, just as we had, because all threes do this with the Three of Swords, connecting to that compassion for others. That's where you can win. So it's definitely saying, even if you've had the slings and arrows, so to speak, of people who haven't been particularly honest or good or understood you, connecting and understanding that in terms of compassion and just moving on is also part of how you win. Don't get caught in petty battles. And if something isn't working with people, just move on. Just move on from them and find the people that do get you and want to collaborate with you. So the next position is Tippereth, and that is about joy and beauty. So the question is, where do you find joy and beauty? Because I'd like to see you find a bit of joy since you're sitting in the Three of Swords at the moment, pile 3. In victory, in recognition. And fair enough too. You are going to be bringing in something new. You do want to be able to be seen for what you've done. You want to work with others, but you still want to be able to really bring something into being and to have that recognized, because I think there is a battle for you. I think you often come up against people who don't get you. So you find joy and beauty when you find the people who recognize what you're trying to do. And this is a very important card because it is connected to Tippereth. So you have a card that is related to the Sephiroth that this position does. So I think that is a really strong indication from Spirit that you will have victory, that you will find joy and victory, that this, as I said, this Three of Swords is temporary. You will find the people that you need. And through that, and through bringing things into being, you will have the victory, and that will bring you great satisfaction. And I think if there's a little bit of disappointment in the Fool reversed, a little bit of the idealist who's been disappointed, it will turn that around for you. So going through this, the next card is for Gevera, and that is about discipline. And basically this recognizes that all of us have aspects of ourselves we need to control, understand and discipline for our highest good and the highest good of others. So the question here is, what do you need to control or discipline in yourself? So we've got the Three of Cups. And there's nothing wrong, really, with celebrating. And we've got another Binah thing here, like 333. There's something, maybe that particular angel number, it means something to you as well too. But you're certainly connecting again to that empathy. It might be again saying don't be too empathic when you're choosing who to be with, that you have a natural tendency to do that and a natural tendency to want to enjoy and celebrate with others. But make sure they're the right others, I guess. Put your energies into those who truly have the same sort of vision and want to work with you. It also might say that there is a potential that sometimes you might sacrifice your own joy and fun and being with others to be so focused on bringing in this new thing. So it is about balance, I think, there, emotional balance. And again, if you are controlling your degree of joy, then you might have a tendency to go into depression more than into joy. So there may be also, don't dwell too long in the Three of Swords as well. Work out when you actually use joy. The 7th card is for Hesed, and that's about kindness. And you're all about kindness by the looks of things, both 3. But the question here is, how do you honor others? How are you kind to others? And this is saying in your idealism, because the 7 of Cups is very idealistic, and that again is lovely. But there is something here, it's coming up over and over, pile 3, that says that somehow you have to temper your idealism and your empathy with pragmatics. So I think that it is saying that you are best kind and honouring others when you find people who share your ideals, who want the same thing and have the same values. And it connects to Nesach, which is about victory. So again, a big part of your victory is finding the right people to connect with on an emotional level and to put that energy, that very kind energy that you have, into those right collaborations and those right connections. From here we come to a Sephiroth, which is not really a Sephiroth. It's called the invisible Sephiroth. It won't even show up on some depictions of the Kabbalah that you might see, but in others it will. It's called the art. It appears to be a passageway, in a sense, that you go through to either on the way down from the divine consciousness to be born, or also on the way back up afterwards. So for the purposes of this reading, I see it as a kind of a life review place, so that when the time comes and you are in your life review, hopefully many, many, many years from now, the question around this is, what would you celebrate and what would you need to face or shed? And this is based on the energies where you're on now. You, of course, can deal with any of this. So if there's anything you need to share, this is a good indication of the things to be aware of, so that's sorted out before you get to that point. So you have the 8 of coins. So this is a great deal of industry, a great deal of learning, a love of learning. I think these are all things that you would celebrate. The capacity to bring something into being, to have really perfected your craft. So this is definitely saying that there is something about the skill base around what you do. And so you are focused on that. And so it is saying that you would be able to celebrate that. The only thing that potentially could be shared is if you have withdrawn from people a bit because of the pain, for instance, and you focus very much on just the craft and not the people, that could be something that you needed to face. But I think that you will sort this out. It's just that is the potential other way of reading that in that position. It connects to Hod, and Hod, remember, is about your truth. So some of you may in fact be working in or dealing with something where there is a lot of learning, a lot of rules, a lot of regulations, for instance, and it's important that you connect back to that collaboration with others, and it's not so precise that you lose that connection. So, and particularly if any of you have been in a legal battle around something, then getting that balance right and making the right decisions is important there as well too. So then we move to the supernal triangle, and the first card we're going to look at is for Binah, which is like the mother, a bit like the divine feminine. It's effectively the divine intelligence and wisdom tempered by compassion and mercy. So the question here is, how do you find and understand your freedom and your empathy? So we've got the Four of Cups, which is often a card of being a bit emotionally stuck. It's connecting to Hesed, which is about how you're kind to others. I think that what this is saying is about not getting emotionally stuck in deciding who and where to put that emotional energy and that empathy to, that it is about making the right connections. It's 2 fours here within the one line, so it is about creating foundations in the world, and this is about what your emotional foundations are. But I think it's sort of saying, don't throw good emotions after bad, so to speak. That where you have your freedom and your empathy, the balance of that is to empathize with the right people, the people who allow you to be free with what you are trying to do. Then we move over to Chokmah, and Chokmah is like wisdom, just undifferentiated philosophical wisdom. So if you consider like Chokmah as that, and then it gets tempered through empathy as it goes down, Chokmah is very philosophical. So it's what wisdom do you need on that kind of philosophical level. And this connects to Binah. So part of your philosophical framework needs to connect to your sense of empathy and compassion for others. They can't be separated. It's too much who you are. So that's very important to remember that you have to almost bring to your wisdom into your philosophy. You have to almost import in that emotional integrity to it. And I do think it's because maybe you've suffered some slings and arrows. And so it's always very important to make sure that you don't move just to the facts and the figures and lose the people, because so much of what you can create is connected with others. So it's about that. It's also about emotional honesty and maturity for yourself. So not letting any of this get past the very key learnings that you've had either in this life or, as I say, in another life. You are not an innocent. You are very emotionally developed and you know who you are, and not to let anybody take you off the course of that if they don't understand you. So at the top of the Kabbalah is Keter, and Keter is the divine intellect and source. So the question in this reading is, what message does the divine want to give you right now to most support you in your life purpose? And so you've got King of Wands. So that connects with Chokmah. So it connects to how you actually use your philosophical intelligence. And I think it's saying that that is how you act in your actions, what you do. As long as what you do aligns with what your philosophy is, you can't go wrong, I think it's saying. It's also saying that acting is important, like moving forward, creating yourself and having yourself known, really picking up that Six of Wands. It is okay, even if you're collaborating with others, it's okay to also be seen for yourself and to own what you bring to this. So I do think that some of you may have worked with others in the past who've either stolen ideas or taken the credit. The divine is saying it is reasonable, it's not egoic, it is reasonable to take the credit for what you bring to something. And then also, of course, with the generosity and the wisdom of a king, to give credit to the others in what they bring to something. And if you sit in that position and you understand that it's okay to feel disappointed in people, but it doesn't mean you won't find the people that you want, and that maybe this was partly a lesson to not let others take over something that you've done, then you will very much be on your pathway to get what you are expected and needed to do for your spiritual development in this life. So pile 3, I'm going to finish off with a couple of cards from a very profound pack called the Soul Cards. It's not a pack that has defined meanings. The cards are just very deep and very spiritual. They're a bit like dream images, I think. That's how they sort of look to me. And so I will tell you what I think it is saying in the context of this collective reading. But of course, for you individually, I would suggest potentially pausing the video just before you click off at the end of the reading, just to see what you get from it. Because just like with dream imagery, your dream interpretations also need to be personal, because different symbols mean different things to different people. So, so the cards I have for you are So to me, this is you holding something precious. There is a very strong sense of the empathic and the sort of divine feminine. I think that's the reason Binah was coming up so strongly for you. But it's something precious, and it's like an offering, and you're ready to provide that offering. But there almost looks like there's a little bit of hesitation in the eyes of this person to me, like, when do I give my offering? So I think that might be a question to you. When will you feel ready to share with others, to take something forward? But you will at some point do that. This is like your inner self crying out from the heavens, literally, like crying out who you are, not necessarily in pain, but in creativity, in joy, in really making yourself heard. And so I think that's very important, and not to feel if anybody's told you that you're not good enough, or they've told you that your ideas are too weird, or they've told you that they should be the leader. That's not true. You have your voice, and you will be able to make your voice heard. That's part of your destiny, because you don't get this card very often. It means a great deal spiritually, and so never lose sight of that, pile 3. So, pile 3, I hope that resonated for you. I hope that it makes sense with your life purpose at the moment and where you are, and gives you the confidence to move forward. I also hope that you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you have any comments, I would love to hear about it. I'd be fascinated to know how this works in your life. So do leave a comment if so. Beyond that, I hope to see you in future readings.